Welcome back to the neighborhood, boys and girls. Our next guest is Kurt Schwiedop. Kurt, welcome to the neighborhood.
Jim, thanks for having me.
KRidge Construction, right?
Yes, KRidge Construction and Common Sense Plumbing.
All right. We met through a couple different scenarios, and I definitely want to talk about a lot of different things. But we like to do stuff a little bit unique here. We like to talk about the stuff, your journey, your maybe childhood, maybe high school, maybe right out of school, first jobs kind of stuff, because I believe that people like to know who you are when they do business with you, so they don't want to do business with Kurt, they want to do business with Kurt who grew up here, who came here, who did this, who had this for a job. So talk a little bit about like first jobs out of high school, different things that you did getting to be this version of Kurt.
So I grew up in the Poconos.
Okay.
My father was a mechanical contractor.
Okay.
Unfortunately, and I think I spoke about this before at one of your events, my parents divorced when I was about 4 years old.
Okay.
And my mother remarried in Florida, and it turns out she married one of the best builders in Orlando. So winters, through school, I lived with my dad full time. And in the summers, when school was out, I spent them with my mother in Florida, and I would go to work with my stepfather. So my father being a mechanical contractor and a plumbing, I always worked with him, nights, weekends, every time. And then when I went to Florida in the summer, my mother was the interpreter at the Orlando International Airport. So I'd go to work with my stepfather. So I started doing construction with him. I started framing when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
Now, when I say framing, they would put the plywood on the roof and tack it down. And the roofs in Florida aren't steep like they are here.
Right,
they're more
right.
walkable. And I would get paid to nail down the plywood. I used to work for a 6-pack of Yoo-Hoo a day. And there's 2 things I learned from that.
Well paid, right?
Well paid.
Yeah.
So I would nail the sheets off on the plywood, by hand. We didn't have guns back then. And there's 2 things I learned. 1, it wasn't enough money. 2, Florida's really hot in the summer. Well, actually 3 things. And do not drink a 6-pack of Yoo-Hoo in the summer. So that I can tell you. So that's how I got my start. And when I was 17, I went in the military because I sort of looked around me where I was in the Poconos, and there wasn't a lot going on. And I had a couple friends that were going down some bad paths, and I didn't want that for myself. I always knew that I wanted more. I've always felt that I wanted more from the time I was a little kid because I'd been shown so much. And I have to say I was lucky because I had a lot of heroes in my life, and they were my father, and I could say my stepfather as well because, as I said before, I was very blessed to have a wonderful stepfather. So I thank him for that. Mike Essler, if you're listening, thank you. So I was fortunate, and I always wanted more for myself.
Yeah.
Went in the military when I was 17. I figured it would get me out of that environment, get me some structure in my life. Went in the military. I met another role model. His name was Chief Tiberio. So I actually went in the military, and I didn't graduate high school yet.
Okay.
And I didn't have my GED. So after boot camp and everything that I went through in my core school, I graduated from the Naval School of Health Sciences in 1985. I reported to my first duty station, and I went in and I met Chief Tiberio, and he said to me, he goes, "You don't have a high school diploma or a GED?" And I said, "No." He goes, "Well, you're no good to me without that. You're going to go here, see this lady, you're going to get your GED. You have to have that if you're going to work for me." So he pushed me towards that. So I went down and I took a pretest to see where I would fall, to see what schooling I would need. Well, evidently I had a lot of good teachers in the Poconos because I almost aced it. So I took the test that day and got my GED that day and went back. And he goes, "What are you doing standing here? I told you not to come back till you have your GED." And I went, "Here." So that sort of started our relationship. And he sort of watched out for me for the whole time that I was in the military.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then coming out of the military, what was a little bit of the roads there? You were right into the trades, or?
So I had learned the industrial and commercial HVAC. We did boilers, chillers, ATC cooling towers. But the one part of the HVAC that I was lacking, and I spoke to my father, obviously, was the residential part of it. So he had suggested that I take a job with a residential contractor. So I did, and I went to work for this guy. And after about 30 days, I said, "Hey, Ron, I have a question for you." I said, "How are you billing somebody for 9 pounds of Freon when the unit can only hold 3 with the line sets?" And he looked at me, he says, "Well, that's for me to worry about," because they were charging by the pound.
Right.
And I said, "There's a better way to do business. I can't work for somebody like this." I went and started my own business. He told me I'd fail. I went back a year and a half later and said, "You ready to sell your business to me?" And he said, "No, obviously." But so we always had like a little bit of rift since then because I knew he was not being an ethical person.
Got it.
And I just never structured my business that way. I've never had to. And, sure, there's a lot of people in this business that make fast money. I've seen them come over 35 years and I've seen them go.
Sure.
And, just by being a good person, doing ethical work, standing behind your work, being a man of your word, following through and treating your customers right, you never have to look for work.
Yeah, and you're in a very competitive industry, just like mortgage and real estate and all the other things. And I guess now there's a little bit more transparency with the internet and all these different things. But how did you set yourself apart from other people? Because like a contractor with a nice truck and well presented could be a great contractor or a shitty contractor. There was no real way of knowing. So how did you set yourself apart to get that type of reputation?
Well, first of all, you have to believe something exists to consider it.
Okay.
Right? So if you don't believe in ghosts, you'll never be scared of ghosts. I don't believe I have any competition because I only compete with my best self. So I never compare myself to others. There's a lot of other contractors out there, but competition is good. It makes a fair and level playing field, and at the end of the day, all competition does is benefit the client and the consumer because they have the option to shop prices. They have the option to do that. How have I set myself apart? I've always tried to have nice trucks. It's important. It's not the most important thing.
Right.
I think being responsive, doing quality work, and there's always going to be issues on a construction site. You're going to do a job, there's going to be a problem. When the customer calls you, I try to get there the next day. Customer calls and says, "Hey, you did our bathroom and we have a little issue. We'll be there at 8:30 tomorrow. Does that work for you?" That's all people want to hear.
Yeah.
When they have a problem, all they want to hear is, "What can I do right now to make it better?" Right. So I've always done that. I've done that for 35 years. It's funny. People hear me talk and say these things, and then they'll do like their little videos or whatever, and they'll be like, "Oh, I've done this, and this is how I do it," which is great because that's what makes competition benefit the consumer.
Sure.
Because if you set the standard and other people are trying to live up to it, and try to create a standard of quality over a long period of time, anybody can do it for 2 or 3 years. Do it for 35.
Right.
Do it for 35. So it benefits the consumer across the board. So that's how I sort of set myself apart. I want to be the example. So
okay, and we met through you being like the inspector for one of the companies that was doing the fix and flip loans and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. You were hired by them to go out and do the construction. So you not only had to do your own stuff, you were looking and checking up on other people's jobs and other people's quality and workmanship.
Absolutely. I'd always done the construction, the retail side of it, and I saw a lot of guys that had some measure of success in doing the flips and whatnot, but it was a part of the business that I didn't understand. So an opportunity arose. I was approached and I was asked to be the vice president of construction for a major lending firm, and I thought of it as a way to educate myself, better myself, and learn that side of it and be able to look behind the curtain. Right. So a lot of these guys talk about how they do things and whatnot. I know what they're doing. I know how they do it. And, I don't always call people out. I don't want to be that person to do that. But it was a great education for me. It was a great opportunity for me to understand from the purchase of the property to the funding of the property, how the loans are structured, what the approval process is, what the rate of failure is and whatnot. So I worked for them for 3.5 years.
Right.
And I'm happy to say I learned a lot when I was there. And then, the market sort of turned a little bit with COVID. Mm-hmm. And there was like a little lull in it. And I said, okay, my time here is up. I'm going to go back and concentrate on my business, but I'm also going to bring the new techniques that I learned, implement them into my company, and help my company grow and flourish off of what I learned there.
Yeah.
And I share that freely with anyone. And you know that. Anybody comes to me for help, I'll be the first one to call them back and say, what can I do to help you out?
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about your growth and your flourishing, because you've added a bunch of people to your team, and you've brought on a different look to the construction company. So talk a little bit about where that came from. Was that just like an idea that you had one night where you're sitting down watching TV, like, I want to grow this much, I want to add these people? And we also had another conversation the other day about figuring out where somebody fits in your company, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's sort of been a little bit of a unique journey, and I have different reasons for doing what I've done. But going back to what I learned at the bank the lending firm that I worked for, I also had the opportunity to go to an event with Dan Satofsky. You familiar with Dan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was a mastermind thing where there was about 15 people, and we were invited to a house in, I believe it was Fort Lauderdale, and it was a paid event. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it as an opportunity to invest in myself a little bit. And so I went with Joe Harris.
Yep.
And there was a lot of people there that do flips and do lending, but it was brilliant people from a very diverse area, and they all came together. And one of the exercises that they did there that I found most interesting was everybody thinks that they have they know what they're best at. And of course, I went there as the construction expert. I'm the guy in the room that should know more about construction than anybody. Well, it turns out that may be true or may not be true, but they did an exercise where they had the other people in the room after getting to know you for a few days. You're in the house, you don't leave. We had the chef from Chop there to cook our meals. So it was very intimate, very close, and we got to talk to everybody. There was classes. Everybody got up and got to speak a little bit. But they wrote down what they felt your genius zone was. And what I discovered at that meeting, and thank you, Dan, because it was very helpful to me as a person, was that my genius zone is actually managing people. And they discovered that because as a construction company, I have had multiple people stay with me for over 25 years and retire. And in the residential industry, that's unheard of. So they realized that my genius zone was managing people, helping them meet their needs and fulfill their needs in life to achieve their goals. Mm-hmm. And when you can do that, it's a very satisfying feeling to be able to do that. So I came back with a whole new perspective, and I said, let's not focus on the construction side so much because I'm putting so much effort into that. I have that. That's second nature to me. Let me really build on what other people feel is my genius zone, which is managing people. So I took a look at it, and oftentimes, getting to the part about how I hire and the philosophy within the company is oftentimes you'll hire somebody for a role and you'll put them in this, we'll use this glass as an example, you put them there and you say, there's your job. And then the owners move them around as they see fit. Well, that person can only grow to the environment that the owner puts them in. My philosophy has changed. When somebody comes in and they want a job, I advertise for what I want. I ask them, what value can you bring to our company? How can you make us grow? What unique perspective can you bring to our company to make it better? And I allow them to bring their ideas. I want to hear everything. We try everything as long as it's reasonable, and I don't put a lid on their box. And oftentimes you may hire somebody for this position and you may find out that they're great at this. And I'm going to use Christina Pizzetti as an example. She was doing wholesale real estate. And just last week, I don't know if you saw the video we put out, she came to me and I said, I think you'd be good at construction sales. Why don't you try it? She's like, what do I do? So we went through our little thing of how we do it, and we have other people that do it. She has $2.6 million in the last 63 days, ready to close, and brought us to the table for the largest single residential, not commercial, construction project that I've ever done in 35 years. Right. And she's 25 years old and never sold construction before in her life.
Sure.
So if I had put her in a box and said, you're going to be my wholesale acquisitions manager, that's what she would have done. I showed her everything that the company could do, and she did it. When you talk to kids that are 18, 19 years old, they don't know where they're going to end up in life. They always go, where am I going to end up? Am I going to end up being a police officer? And I always tell them, you end up where you belong. So that's the philosophy within the company. Bring people in. This is what I'd like you to do, but here's all the other opportunities. And then once they'll find where they belong.
Yeah.
So it sort of morphed into that.
That's
so
awesome.
that's my philosophy on that.
That's awesome. All right, let's talk a little bit about like mindset, all these things. Like, what do you do personally? You went to the mastermind. Do you do any type of meditation, any type of physical training, any type of podcast or professional development? What do you do to make you the best version of you?
Wow, that's a tough one. So I have 5 children. Mm-hmm. First and foremost,
that's rookie level here for the record. Here, 5 children.
What's that?
Level. That's rookie level. I got 7.
I know. I'm just beginning.
Yeah.
So I have 5 children. So one, we talk about being an example, and I think the most important thing is always being an example for your children. So be above reproach in how you conduct your life, as much as possible.
Sure.
I do exercise, weekly. Do I get as much as I'd like to? No.
Right.
But I have stepped that up recently. But the one thing that I do, and I've always done, and I've done this for 35 years, you will very rarely catch me working past 4 o'clock on Friday. I will work 20 hours a week. You guys will see me. I'll be posting videos at 2 a.m. in the office. Monday through Thursday, I work as much as I need to get the job done. Fridays at noon, I'm calling all my guys, start wrapping it up, make sure this job's secure. And we run down our list through our CRM. We check with each other, we make sure everything's done. We have a project manager go around to each project that they're assigned to, make sure the house is tarped. I don't want to get a call on a Saturday that water came in. Right. I want that done Friday by 2 o'clock. Hey guys, you had a killer week. It's Friday, 2 o'clock, cut out early, you're getting paid for a full week. See you later.
Right.
Done. If we have to stay till 8 o'clock to make that happen that night, we do it. We try not to. But my philosophy is kill yourself Monday through Thursday at work, dedicated to work. Friday from 2 o'clock on till Sunday at 8 p.m. is your family time.
Right.
And your time. So we go to our shore house, we enjoy our family, we have our friends down, and
you're good.
That's how I decompress from the stresses of the week.
All right, cool. So then let's go to your personal question. I'm going music with you. I'm going music.
Wow.
So you can have any performer or band or anyone come to your house or your shore house and play 2 songs. Who would the band or performer be, and what would the 2 songs that you'd want to hear them play?
Now, does it have to be 2 songs by the same band?
Yeah. 2 songs by the same band, yeah.
Well, I would have to probably... Sting would be my band choice, but his songs aren't the ones that I would pick. So you're putting me in a box here a little bit.
Okay.
So I would take...
Move on to the next one.
No, I would take the Beatles.
Okay. All right.
And there's a song, it's called In My Life.
Okay.
I'm 56 years old. And if you listen to the words of that song, it has a lot of deep meaning. And he talks about how we go through the transitions in life and we go through changes. And you've had people in your life that you cared a lot about, whether it be friends, family, ex-wives, things like that. And he says, from time to time, I will stop and think about them, but I'll always love you more. And oftentimes you see people just really disregard people that are not in their lives anymore. And I'm a caring person, so I care about people's well-being. So that would be one song that I think I would love to hear live.
Okay.
So then I'd have to pick another Beatles song.
Yeah.
Okay. So the one that comes to mind that I always make a joke with Michelle Bishop about is Michelle My Belle.
Okay.
So that's what I always call her because, we do a lot of work together.
Sure,
she does a lot. So that's just as a funny one.
Nice.
But so I would have to go with the Beatles on that.
Nice. Awesome.
Plus Sal loves the Beatles and he worked with me. Nobody works with me. Nobody works for me. They work with me for a long time. And he's a big Beatles fan. And maybe we could get him to do Rocky Raccoon with him.
Get a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Raccoon.
So I would go with the Beatles for my friends and a little bit for myself.
Nice. Awesome. Kurt, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you, Jim.
We'll be back with the next guest on Mr. Mortgage's Neighborhood.